What's up, y'all? You here with Young Paris. I'm at the Michael C. Rockefeller Wing at the Met Museum, and I'm about to show you guys tribal African art. Check this out. These are some of my favorites from Burkina Faso. These are the Bois people. These are performance pieces that are usually worn as masks. Very beautiful tribe. But they have really interesting works here at the Met because they preserve them. They make them look exactly like they would in that period. So you have to really appreciate the Met for their preservation of their works. All of this is Burkina works. You have Mosi tribe work here. Look at this piece. Wow, some of my favorite tribe. We'll go here to also Burkina Faso. This is a chameleon mask. It looks like a sculpture, but it's actually worn as a mask on top of the head as well. Okay, let's keep it rocking. African art history. King Paris. Turkeys from the 60s, 70s. This is a full Dogon figure. And you know, pieces like this are very rare to find the full body, so it's beautiful. Shout out to all my Malians, Dogon, love it. So these are the Baoulé people, the Yaouré, some of my favorites. This is a Nda mask, the twin mask. I have one of these in my collection. But these are some of my favorite, the Côte d'Ivoire work. We're gonna go see the Sunufo in a minute, but these guys are like one of the most intricate artisans when it comes to Central West African tribal work. So Burkina Faso, probably my second favorite, but Côte d'Ivoire is up there on top. So once again, you have Baoulé pieces here. These are masks worn in ceremonies and various rituals. I try not to get into the detail of why they did things and to the extent because I don't want to disrespect the people and the tribes and their intention behind, you know, their work because it's a lot more detailed than I can explain. But I can give you like a soft perspective of why they did and some of the relics and what they represented. But once again, this is Côte d'Ivoire, Yaouré, Baoulé people. More Dogon pieces here. These are people who study the Star of Sirius, so do your homework on the Dogon. Very beautiful tribe. Once again, we're covering Mali here at the Met. These are the Bamana of Mali. Look at these pieces. Just get a gut view. Bamana region of Mali. Very beautiful tribe. Sometimes they call these Jomongoni figures, also relics, protectors, guardians. So as I was mentioning before, the Sunufo, one of my favorite tribes, especially one of the most inspirational tribes for my works are the Sunufo. Once again, Côte d'Ivoire. And look at these headdresses. They call these the Sejen. They're symbols of knowledge and authority. 19th, 20th century. Get a close up over the artistry. Look at that. So these are the Sejen birds, and then you have the bush cow headdress. These are the Dan. These are also Côte d'Ivoire. You're going to see a lot of Côte d'Ivoire when you go into tribal works because this tribe and these people are very prominent in their works. Like they really made a lot of work in this period. That's why I love probably Côte d'Ivoire is my most favorite works, and also Congo, obviously. We're going to go into the Congo in a second, but these are the Dan. When you see these spacious eye looking like piercing through the soul, these are Dan. And these are actually spiritual, going into the spiritual world kind of pieces. So intentionally used to really communicate with the other side. Again, I try not to get into too much detail with the intention of the piece because I don't want to miss word, but I do know that Dan specifically were more connected to the spiritual world. So very beautiful works. These are some of my favorites as well. From Sierra Leone, these are the Mende. Okay, this is the Bassa from Liberia. They call these the Ndoli Joe masks, and this is actually worn in celebration of women. Do some research. We have the Baga. This is Guinea. The Baga. This looks like a statue or a sculpture. Was actually worn as a headdress. You know, these are seen in homes, in modern homes, as sculptures, but they actually were worn on their head. They were headdresses and performed. So imagine putting this over your shoulder and performing. This is like probably 40, 50 pounds. But when you're in that spirit and you're in that energy and you got that adrenaline and you're, you know, encouraged by the sounds and the spirits, like the weight has no weight. It just feels like feathers. I've been in this experience because I come from a family of this traditional drum and dance, so I know when you wear the mask, even if you pick it up and it's a 30-pound piece, when you're in the spirit, you put that thing on, it feels light. It's like there's no weight. It's interesting. The adrenaline, what it does when you're in spirit. But again, these are the Baga of Guinea. Most of the pieces you're going to see in this entire collection are always going to be 19th, 20th century, meaning from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, sometimes early 2000s, but they try to go back to make them antiques to keep it over 100 years. That's where it gets premium. But again, what's powerful about what's happening here at the Met is the preservation, the fact that even this being an exposed piece, you can touch it. They're allowing you to see the transparency of the work from a tribe, from a village, hundreds of thousands of miles from here, and now you have full access to see Africa in its presence. And it's beautiful, when you see something like this, when you learn to appreciate the work, you really understand the beauty. It's not just some voodoo, scary relic. These are objects that people use for practice, for ritual, and to get by, rites of passage, the birth of a child, the birth of twins, death. These pieces had importance, and they weren't ever intended to be used to be in someone's home. They were intended to be used for practice, and a lot of them were discarded. So what you're seeing here is really objects that were held and preserved by families and collectors, and now they ended up at the Met. So we have also a lot of oceanic here. I'm not into oceanic art so much. I'm not really familiar with the history. Maybe I need to do more research, but I really try to focus on Central West Africa, but obviously incredible pieces to look at. Somewhat enchanting, but definitely a different culture. Let's go into the Congo. This is what I was excited about. Why? Because I'm Congolese. So I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about these people and their intention. Why? Because I practice this. I grew up in this. When you see me, normally I have my maquillage because I'm also carrying my rites of passage. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Congo, specifically the DRC, because DRC were really prominent when it came to sculptural works, figures, masks from Central West Africa during these tribal periods. These are the Bakongo works. They call this tribe the Sonye, which are very close. I have a lot of friends and relatives who are also Sonye, but these were power relics. These were very, very, very intentional relics. What people would call witch doctors, we call healers. And these were used in homes of healers to do incredible practice to heal people, but also to protect people. So do your research on the Sonye. These people lived in the river regions of the DRC. Very powerful work, very enchanting work. Again, if you look at it and you don't understand the intention, you might think it's voodoo, but this is really about protection. So these are the Sonye. We're going to go to Boyo pieces. Sometimes these are known as Hemba or Boyo. This is a portrait of Akesa. This here is a portrait of a chief. So a lot of times in these villages, they would make portraits, sculptures, statues of those who they admired and who were in control of the domain at the time. Let's show some fabrics. I love that they showed fabrics because I'm also going to be doing some fabric works with some of my paintings. But these are Kuba. These are the Kuba. These are my direct people. And also river region people. Some of these works here are from the 20th century, but if you can see the minimalism and the repetition of these patterns. What's interesting is that, when you think about artists from modern society, artists try to create their own style and take intentions from different pieces. What was important about a lot of these type of tribes is they would create as collectives. So once the style was, important to them, they just consistently used that style. So there would be various artists that understood, like, this is how we make our cloths, this is how we make our skirts, this is how we make our figures, this is how we make our masks. So it wasn't one guy trying to make one type of mask. They all used the same ideas. So when you see the works, you never really know who created the mask because it was created by a collective rather than one artist. So most works from these regions don't have any author, there's no artist. Even the word art wasn't really something that was used in these regions at the time. But this is the Kuba cloth, which comes in various forms. It's usually made out of tree bark that is mashed down, or sometimes it's also sewn. But this is like some of the most incredible Kuba works I've seen. This is like beautiful stuff. I think this is about 16 feet long, this one. Also Kuba works here. You see some pende work here. You see headdresses. Usually these are like prestige headdresses that were worn by chiefs. You also see the picks here. Get a close-up of that. These were worn by high-ranking men, actually, these picks. When you think of picks, you think of it as something that is keeping up a woman's hair, but the pick was actually, more prominent in men. A lot more Kuba cloth here that were done by various artists, but some of these you see like in modern stores now, you see Kuba being used. Look at this pottery work, it's pretty incredible. Now let's go see one of my favorite power pieces. This is the Nkisi. This is the Nkisi. Nganga. Very powerful work here. This is meant for ritual healing. So people see this and you think automatically voodoo, killing people, stabbing. No. This was used when you would see the healer. People call it witch doctor. And if you had an intent for something you wanted upgraded in your life, or something was wrong at home, you would come see the doctor. And every time there's a staple here, you would put an intent behind the staple. And the staple just shows how many hundreds of people came and saw this particular piece. So, you do prayers on the piece. The doctor then goes and does his own ritual to try to summon whatever that intention was from the people. So these were used very particularly. A lot of times in the centerpiece here, you would see they'll be filled with different type of what we call gris-gris. And that's really what the doctor would use to communicate with the spirit world. So, in these times, people weren't using, any type of technology to really give them reference to outside information. They got it directly from spirituality. So, very powerful work here in Kisi. It's a Fang piece. The Fang are the most prominent pieces for tribal art collectors, mainly because of the rarity of finding these works. And obviously this piece in particular was given from a Rockefeller to another Rockefeller. I saw this in an old collection, I can't think of the name now, but one of the most prominent pieces ever. I think this would sell for 20 to 30 million, probably at auction. But the Fang are very, very prominent when it comes to collectors of tribal African art. This was another Betsy. Come look at this. I think there's a Betsy that just sold at Christie's for 14 million, I want to say. That's correct, 14 million at Christie's. So again, these are the works that are very rare, very prominent. Some of the earliest works when Europeans were discovering tribal African art. So very hard to find Fang works, originals, that is. Another one of my favorite tribe are the Punu. And these were really to adorn the beauty of women, worn by men. Also used for mass ceremonies and performances. These were masks. They would be adorned by raffia and worn in celebration. So these are the Punu, very powerful tribe. Another one of the very rare collector's items are the Kota. Also pieces from Gabon. Also very, very, very popular among tribal art collectors. I think Kota works now at auction and selling for north of $1 million. I saw one recently at a gallery show for like 200,000. So these are also very, very, very collector items for those who collect. Kota, Bakota. These are Kwele artists. What I love about these works is that they look like a heart. You see the heart? And those, again, in the early times that we collected tribal art, were really affected by the beauty of how the heart shape was around the mask. They just found that to be super incredible. These are also from the DRC, from my people, from the Congo. These Kwele artists, it's a totally distinctive, different type. You see, like, again, they didn't just create solo, they created as collective. So they tried to follow the same type of guidelines with the work. The way that they cut the shapes, the way that they made the angular dimensions of the figure, it was very similar at the time because they wanted to be consistent with the type of representation of their tribe. So these are the Kwele. You have a gorilla mask here, you have the elephant mask here, and you have the ram mask. So these are the Bamileke of Cameroon. Step back, get a whole view of this. This is the throne of Juteo. This is a throne. So this was around the king or the chief at the time. You know, look at the detail of the beadwork here. Come see the detail. Look at this beadwork. Get really close. Incredible. Wood, glass, beads. Obviously, cowrie shells, very important shell that is used throughout. So let's look at the ballet artists from Nigeria. Again, these works will be seen a little on the scary side because they look like skin. And they would take the skin from antelope or various animals and apply them to the faces of what looked like realistic people. So, you know, these were power figures, but they were also used for dances and ceremonies. They were danced during like funerals, processions. Okay, we're gonna end this walkthrough. I just want to thank the Metropolitan Museum for just allowing me to come here and do my walkthrough. We're now gonna close this walkthrough with Young Paris at the Met with the Benin tribe of Nigeria. These are probably one of my favorite groups to study because it was a kingdom, and before they were colonized and, you know, ravished by the British, they were thriving and producing some of the strongest goods out of Africa. So this very popular piece here is what people call as Queen Idi. Although she wasn't a queen, she was the mother of the king, but she was a very, very powerful and prominent idol at the time. A lot of warriors and soldiers would wear like this head in particular around their waist. And, you know, the Portuguese were really, you know, powerful allies of the Benin at the time. So if you look really closely, you'll see the Portuguese symbols of Portuguese men that were being adorned, you know, because, you know, they were spending a lot of money on the commerce at the time and helping fund the Benin kingdom. But what are these? These are called the bronzes. Benin bronzes were all throughout the kingdom of Benin, and they were stolen. And a lot of them were scattered throughout Europe and Americas as collector's items. You know, these at auction go north of $2-3 million a piece. Obviously, incredible bronze work. You know, they were known as blacksmiths of bronze. You see the ivory here, giant elephant tusk ivory, specifically carved for the chiefs and the kingdom of the time. And they would look like this, they were dressed like this. When you see these headrests, this is how the chief and his predecessors were dressed. So it's just a way to show their prominence and their power at the time. Once again, shout out to the Met. Young Paris here doing my walkthrough at the Michael C. Rockefeller Wing, showing you guys Africa and the beauty and in some context of some of these pieces. Now again, I'm no historian. I'm just going off of my history. Some of it is directly through my lineage. Some of it is things that I've also studied. But come by the Met, come see the Africa Wing. It's beautiful. They have incredible works here. And they really did the due diligence of preserving some of the most powerful pieces in the tribal art world. Again, if you collect tribal art, if you're into this type of space, you want to come here and see and learn about this history, especially if you're African, you want to learn about your past. But again, we're here at the Michael C. Rockefeller Wing, Young Paris, showing you guys African art, giving you a little bit of history, and also some exciting moments of what these people represented and what they did, and what they still do. Let's go.